private collectors build their own museum. And is it a good thing? Because on the other hand, the governments, for example, especially in Germany, they sometimes withdraw funds and leave it to public-private partnerships. Do you think that's a good development?
Well, I think that to start off with, I think it's extremely dangerous to follow the German model of allowing your contemporary art museums to be stocked by collectors, because that way you don't give a sense of a museum that is going to have its own critical mass on which it will then build its scholarship and its accumulated expertise. I mean, a museum should get richer and richer in knowledge and holdings with every generation. That is why the great museums of the world are so great. And you have to actually own the stuff, because if you don't own the stuff, you don't invest the same kind of emotional and intellectual energy in it. So I think it's a bad idea, not just because you don't end up owning the items, it's because it doesn't get the brain firing in the same way. Okay, private people starting museums, that's fine if they also endow them, if they put a large capital sum behind the museum for a long period of time, because running a museum is actually very expensive. Interesting enough, I was recently in Moscow, together with a large proportion of the art world, with, Simon de Poirier, with Jeffrey Deitch from New York, with curators from the Metropolitan Museum, with Norman Rosenthal from the Royal Academy, with art consultants left, right and centre. And everybody was attracted by the fact that a Russian oligarch, Shalva Shigurinsky, said that he might be going to construct a private museum on the site of the former Rossiya Hotel near Red Square, which is being redeveloped for him by Norman Foster. So everybody was in there to see what, in a sense, they could get out of it or contribute in some way or other. And I was talking to Jeffrey Deitch, and I said, who is a well-known New York kind of art dealer, but also sort of art impresario. I said to him, what do you think ought to happen? He said, well, Forbes magazine says that Shalva Shigurinsky is worth $1.4 billion. He said, that is not rich enough. That is not rich enough to fund in perpetuity a decent-sized museum. I said, are you sure? And he said, no. And he started doing the sums for me. I mean, it is very, very expensive to keep a big museum open. What I suspect is going to happen is a lot of things will open up and then will run out of steam. And when the collector dies or loses interest, will then become these rather odd little collections of items. And if they've been put into some kind of legal limbo, they will moulder. If they haven't, they will eventually get dispersed.
So an outlook, could you give us an outlook? Does this boom of contemporary art continue?
Well, that's what everybody's asking themselves, aren't they? I mean, it's. I think that as long as the very large bonuses are being paid and people are getting so rich so fast, hundreds of millions are turning into billions quickly, it will last, because the huge quantity of money at the top is holding up the market below, and people will go out and spend anything from, the $11.3 million that was spent on the Peter Doig to, $20,000 as though it was small cash. If and when, and it is when, the current financial boom ends, not immediately, because there's always a kind of time delay. About a year later, the art market will begin to freeze. Now, this is what the people who are investing now don't realise. It's not like buying shares which go up and go down, but are always saleable. It's something. The art market goes up, but when it starts to go down, quite a high percentage of it becomes completely unsaleable. It becomes illiquid, because even if the works of art are quite good or very good, as a very old friend of mine who remembered the 1928 Depression, he said, when the Depression comes, the rich are still there, but they don't buy because they're waiting for the market to go to its lowest point. So people don't buy, and the dealers aren't selling, so they're not buying, so they're closing. So everything gets very, very, very slow. And the experience of holding a work of art that maybe you want to cash in and you find that you can't sell it to anybody will be very shocking to a lot of people.
What traveling around the art fairs and visiting them, I find that a large part of art is not very much represented in the art market. That's multimedia, video, internet, web art. Mm. And a friend of mine said, yeah, because it's not an object of which can trade. And as you said, of course, art is not stock. Yeah, that's really that it can trade easily. Yeah. But I think that's he said that's even harder to trade with multimedia web art, and that's why that's the reason why why you don't see it very often at art fairs or at the exhibitions.
Yes, you see token examples to add a little bit of spice, but you don't see a great deal of it for sale. I wonder whether this is going to change. I mean, but I'm surprised it's taking so long, because we've all now got, well, not all of us, but I mean, most people now have a flat screen television, and the moment you have a flat screen, you can actually turn a piece of video art or multimedia art into a work of art. All you have to do is keep projecting it onto your flat screen, and you can hang it on the wall just like a painting. I always thought that was going to be the turning point. It doesn't seem to have been it. Maybe it's got something to do with the problem of editions. And of course there's an additional technological problem, which the Kramlichs, who are a very interesting San Francisco couple, who have the biggest collection of multimedia and digital art probably in the world, and are having a house constructed for them by Herzog and de Meuron specifically to display it. They say that there's a nightmare technological problem with multimedia art, which is that the hardware on which it is made goes out of date, and then you can't get it anymore. And so you have to buy not only the art itself, but you have to buy a reserve of computers, so that when the existing computer runs out, you can dig out this old computer and run it on itself. And then there's the whole kind of ethical question: is it all right to transfer it into a more up-to-date digital format and so on? So I mean, maybe that's something else that bothers people. I don't know.
Yeah, just been to Sekheim
yes.
in Karlsruhe. They had a lot of really very expensive beamers, projectors, and one that it's a lot of money involved. And as I said, the conservation of tapes, of even digital information, it's really a horror for someone who has a museum for multimedia. Yes, very expensive. Yes, then thank you very much for the interview. It's very interesting. Yes. And do you have something else would you want to? I've got suddenly gone blank now that I feel like I could communicate with the world. A complete blank in my mind. Anything I want to say. Well, yes. I mean. I think it's a completely different subject, but something that is very close to my heart. We all know about climate change, and we all know that this is going to be the great topic of the future. But one of the greatest works of art ever created by man, which is the city of Venice, is going to be drastically affected by climate change, quite apart from its own peculiar ecological problems. And I think people need to wake up to this. I mean, I think they need to wake up to the fact that climate change is going to have huge implications for the great monuments, because we don't cover just art. We cover the patrimony, we cover the built heritage and so on. And the water, which is the other huge problem it's facing. You know, the big dams that are being created in Turkey, in China, in Persia, in Iran, all threaten huge quantities of the archaeological heritage of the world. And this is going to we're going to have to make very serious choices, which at the moment, you know, a few enthusiasts are campaigning about, saying, for God's sake, send in the emergency archaeologists, at least excavate a little. For example, when they built the Three Gorges Dam, it was known that a whole civilization, about which very little is known, the Bar, it has been wiped out. I mean, it's underwater now, will never be excavated. So that went, it was a page of the world's history, disappeared.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes. Okay.